Can the 18th pick be the most underrated spot in the NFL draft? History says absolutely. Before Jerry Rice, there was Art Monk, the first man ever to reach 900 catches, snagged right here at number 18. From the NFL's all-time interception king, Paul Krause, to elite anchors like Maurkice Pouncey, the 18th spot is where franchises find their backbone. Today we're digging into the gridiron with legends taken at pick 18. We're joined by our friend Ed Cleese once again. Let's head into the pig pen. It's Pigskin Dispatch's Draft Countdown.
Hey, Darin, how are you?
I'm doing super, Ed. I can't wait to hear your perspective on some of the players that have been drafted in the number 18 hole of the NFL draft.
Yeah, don't get your hopes up because this was a little bit of a ho-hum research results here, I'd say.
Yeah, well, the good news is it's not as many Hall of Famers as the 19th spot where we had 5. This did have 4 Hall of Famers drafted out over the last 90 years. Perhaps you'll be talking about 1 or 2 of them, but we're going to talk about all of them before the show is over. I think still some decent players.
Yeah, there's some on here, and recently it's not been great. Gray Zabel was taken by the Seahawks last year, and he's already considered to be one of the better interior O-linemen in the league and a tremendous year for the Super Bowl champs. So he's off to a good start. Jalen Phillips was taken in this spot. There's not a lot else recently that really stood out to me, and I kind of went, like I said, I'm going all the way back to 1980, and I wound up with a lot of guys that I was kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. Only two quarterbacks have been taken. Since 1980. We'll talk about one of them here shortly. The other one would be Chad Pennington in 2000. He was the 2-time comeback player of the year in the NFL, which is really remarkable. But it also shows that the guy just could not stay healthy. You know, a small guy, an undersized guy, a lot of guts. It was very productive, but really only played a handful of seasons in the NFL with any level of consistency or health.
And probably didn't have played behind some of the best offensive lines in the NFL either. That's
right. Yeah, he wasn't on great teams or anything. So yeah, but an interesting case there. We've talked a lot about disappointing running backs, and the 18th pick is no exception. Butch Woolfolk in 1982, T.J. Duckett 2002, Napoleon Kaufman 1995, and then I've got 2 kind of sad cases, and one of them is a running back. And that would be Robert Edwards, taken in 1998 by the Patriots. This is really sad. I remember this pretty well. He had a 1,000-yard season his rookie year. And then at the Pro Bowl, playing in a sand flag football game that was on TV, he had a horrific leg injury. If you can handle such things, it's actually, you can find it on YouTube because they were, it was televised. It was a devastating lower leg injury that almost cost him his leg. He tried to battle back. He missed, I think, 2 or 3 full seasons. He made it back onto a roster, but just never did anything from there. Literally almost lost his leg. And poor guy, a very promising career taken out really early. And then there was with a freak injury. And then there was another one that I didn't remember or recall. And that would be Don Rogers, was taken in 1984 by the Browns. He was a defensive back. He was second in Defensive Rookie of the Year voting. And then he started all 16 games his second year for some Browns teams that were just turning themselves into a Super Bowl contender in 85. And if you remember, we talked about, Hanford Dixon and Frank Minifield in some previous pods. They had really good corners. And so he was going to be a safety back there. But after his second year, he died of a cocaine-induced heart attack in the offseason. 8 days after Len Bias died, very famous case in the NBA, and it was the night before Rodgers' wedding. So a really tragic offseason incident. A young man, lost his life there. But yeah, that was something I didn't really know or remember, and kind of a tough one.
Yeah, well, I didn't remember that either, but how tragic. It probably was overshadowed by the whole Len Bias.
Exactly.
At that time. That was big news.
It stuck out because I saw he started all games in his career and then didn't have a third year. And I was like, well, that's weird. Usually these guys get a second chance somewhere. And then I read, and obviously that's why. There's one more. There wasn't a whole lot of busts, but there is one I really wanted to point out to you. Do you remember the name Aaron Jones?
Aaron Jones. Well, I can
Not the
think of Aaron
current.
Jones. It's not the Aaron Jones I'm thinking of, though.
Your Steelers took defensive end Aaron Jones in the 1988 draft, 18th overall. Old Aaron had 9.5 sacks for the Steelers over 5 years. So there's probably a reason you don't remember him.
Yeah, probably not. I don't even think they were in the 3-4 yet. But
so yes, and that was that would have been 88. So he would have played up until almost basically until Cowher got there. So
right.
Some really poor team, not poor, but not great teams at the end of the Knoll era.
Yeah, it'd be probably the last or second to last draft that Knoll had.
Right. So not a good one there. There. There were some good ones that made the honorable mention list. We had Leon Hall, longtime corner in the league drafted in 2007. Jeff Backus started for the Lions for like a decade on the offensive line, 2001. Willie Galt. It's kind of funny. Like, I think that's a guy a lot of people remember, drafted in 1983 because he was, sprinter speed, track speed, one of the faster guys, I think, in the history of the league, but really didn't produce much. If you go back and look at his numbers, he had a couple of really big yards per catch years, but not a lot of catches. He was, of course, on the 85 Bears. And then Alfred Williams, kind of an interesting one. He was drafted in 91 by the Bengals. And then he had a all-pro season with the Broncos in 97. And that was kind of like it. So he was like average, all-pro. So that kind of stuck out. And then my very last cut was a guy that I remember well from the NFC East days. That would be Freddie Joe Nunn, who played for some really poor Cardinals teams, drafted in 1985. A really solid defensive end for them. They moved him to a linebacker some, had quite a few sacks, a couple double-digit sack years, and a good player on a lot of bad teams.
Yeah, I remember Freddie Joe Nunn too. So, yeah, those are names I'm familiar with. So, okay, those are some pretty big names that, decent players that you cut here. So I'm interested to see who made the top 5.
Yeah, I would say my top 3 here is shaky, or at least the 4 and 5. It was kind of like I felt like all these players were the same. But at number 5, I went with Will Smith, drafted in 2004, defensive end by the Saints. He played all 9 years of his career in New Orleans. And I think what sticks out for me for him, maybe the reason that put him over, is his career with the Saints coincided with the best stretch in Saints history. So, the Breeze teams, the 2000 Saints, obviously he was on the Super Bowl team. He appeared in 139 games, all for New Orleans. Only made 1 Pro Bowl. He had a couple double-digit sack seasons. He did have 13 sacks in 2009, the year they won the Super Bowl, and he played very well in the Super Bowl against the Colts. And then, not to be a total downer, but it would be weird not to mention it, he was killed in a road rage incident in 2016. Yeah.
Well, I was unaware of that. Oh,
boy. Yeah, kind of an ugly thing. It involved he and his wife and some random driver. I remembered it at the time, and then when I read about it, it kind of clicked a little bit. But yeah, I would say, he's pretty high up there in, for Saints fans. A guy that was there through all of the best moments and the best times in their franchise, in their whole run of their franchise. Really, he was a consistent, prominent player for their defense.
Okay, I think a very solid pick. So who do you have at number 4?
I got Ryan Kelly, drafted in 2016, was a center for the Colts. Very interesting, kind of like his quarterback that he played with when he was drafted. He retired, like Andrew Luck. He retired out of nowhere. Just was cruising right along, made 4 Pro Bowls, 2 second-team All-Pros, was cruising along to probably be one of the better centers in the league, and then just called it quits. But the reason I have him here again above some of the other honorable mention guys is he peaked well higher than a lot of them. So he was kind of like on that track, and I got him number 4.
Okay. All right. I think he's solid. What about number 3?
Number 3 is one of the more polarizing quarterbacks, I think, in the history of the league in terms of when we're ranking where someone belongs. And I think you know who I'm going to talk about. I got a lot to say about him. And that is drafted in 2008 by the Ravens, quarterback Joe Flacco. So I'm going to ask you a question. How many Pro Bowls do you think Joe Flacco has made in his now 18-year career?
I'd say maybe 1.
1. Do you know what year it was?
I'm going to guess maybe it was a Super Bowl year.
It was 2025 this past season.
Oh, really? This past year? Wow.
Which goes to show you how diminished the Pro Bowl has become, that has mattered, but also shows you that he never made it in any of these other years. We're not talking all pro.
Okay, wait. So I guess to put that in perspective, so 2025, not a very good year in Cleveland, but they had 2 of their quarterbacks make the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, kind of tells you all you need to know. I would say just such a strange career, Darin. So listen to this. So he had 72 wins over his first 7 years in the league. Then he had 35 wins over his next 11 seasons in the league. And he only had 5 wins over 4 full seasons prior to his run with the Browns in 2023. But so he's difficult for me because I can't figure out if he's just a stat compiler that's done a nice job to stick around. How do we rank this guy? He's 14th all time in yards, top 15 in yards. He's 21st in touchdowns. And he also had a massive season in 2012. They won the Super Bowl. He was the Super Bowl MVP. And there was no doubt about it. I mean, he was great in that game. He was great that whole playoffs. Even in some other years where they didn't reach the Super Bowl, he played well in the playoffs in a lot of years. Was pretty clutch. So he's a really interesting Hall of Fame case to me. It's kind of hard to reconcile where it lands with everything with him. But definitely better than all of these other honorable mention guys that I've got on my list.
Yeah, he is an interesting case. I mean, I think maybe if you're going to say he has a downfall, it's because he's a statue. He has no running ability. He's not a threat at all to run, but he's an old school pocket passer who's got a big arm. Even to this day, I mean, the guy can throw a nice long ball that really, set up his team for a big thing. You think about those the play in the Super Bowl, or was it Super Bowl or the AFC Championship, where he threw that real long ball at the
AFC Championship game in Denver.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so he still has a really nice touch. I thought the Browns were crazy in 2023 when they let him go and he went to Indianapolis or whatever for that year.
Right.
I thought he was probably so productive for them at the end of the year coming off the couch that they should have probably signed him. I think Browns fans agreed with that too. And I guess they had buyer's remorse and brought him back last year and let him go again, traded him away to an divisional rival, which is crazy. But yeah, I think a very solid pick. I'm not sure if Hall of Famer I'd put on him, but definitely very memorable quarterback.
Right. Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting to see when he finally does retire, what the Hall of Fame does with him.
Yeah. All right. So who do you have above Joe Flacco?
So number 1 and 2, I swear I didn't stuff the ballot box because of you and I here, but I think they're both legit. Number 2, I've got Marquise Pouncey, drafted in 2010, center by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Another guy that kind of retired a little bit abruptly. A 10-year career, 9 of those he was in the Pro Bowl, 5 All-Pro teams, 2 of them first team, all-decade team for the 2010s, and I would say also a Hall of Fame case. Again, the only thing that you might hold against him a little bit is most Hall of Fame linemen played longer than Pouncey did, but I think he probably played long enough to go ahead and have that case. And like you and I always say, that all-decade team is really important to me when I'm comparing these guys.
Yeah, he a couple things he had setback. He had an injury early in his career, took him out for most of the season, and then his next season he comes back. I think it was his rookie season. His next season he comes back. He takes out a Hall of Fame guard of the Steelers for the season by trying to block a defender, and ends up hitting his own guy. And then the snap of his very last game, that playoff game against the Browns, where he just airballed one that the Browns recovered and end up just annihilating the Steelers in the playoff game in a shootout. So I think those are kind of things. And for some the image of him sitting on the bench with Roethlisberger, tears in his eyes after the game. Right. And kind of a sad story to way to end your career, but very productive when he was playing, and very solid, follows that mold of the Steelers' really strong centers that they've had over the years.
For sure. No doubt. That's enough talk about the Steelers.
Okay.
Let's talk about number 1.
Oh, okay. You want to go there. Okay.
Let's talk about number one. Number one is the great Art Monk, drafted in 1980 by the Washington Redskins.
Just made your cut.
Just
of yours.
I still have his poster in my garage. My Art Monk poster lives forever. A consistency would be the first word. He actually had a bunch of people in the media, Peter King, who I'll never forgive, railed against him getting in the Hall of Fame, publicly lobbied against Monk to get in the Hall of Fame. And I think one thing that, if we'll start with maybe the reasons that people would lobby against him, would be that his demeanor at the position was very different than a lot of receivers over the years. He was not showy. He was not flashy. He was very quiet, both in his personality and sort of in the way he played. So that right off the bat,
his last name was very befitting of his
yes, exactly. Yes. So, so that stuck out. And then, accolades wise, he doesn't jump out at you because he only in 3 Pro Bowls and 1 All-Pro team. The other thing that's important to consider, he never played for an air it out type offense. The Gibbs offense, a lot of deep throws. They would go deep, but it was a ground control game through most of Monk's career, where they threw it when they needed to throw it. But it was always going to be difficult to put up gaudy numbers in that offense. He made a ton of big plays, and then one thing that I always felt bad about was he didn't play in the 1982 postseason when they won their first Super Bowl. He was hurt. And then in the 87 postseason, when they won their second Super Bowl, he only played in the Super Bowl. And he caught 1 pass for 40 yards in that game. So he's kind of quiet in those 2 Super Bowl runs. Thankfully, in 1991, when they won their 3rd Super Bowl, he was healthy. And in the postseason only, in 3 games, Darin, he had 15 catches for 252 yards and a touchdown. He had 5 1,000-yard seasons, okay? That doesn't necessarily jump out. But then he had 5 more seasons at 750 or more yards. So, again, we kind of talk about consistency. He's just 10 years, 12 years, always there. And then I think the number one thing that pushes him over the top for me for being a surefire Hall of Famer is at one point in his career, he held the single season catch record of 106, which is surpassed many times since. But at the time, he set it. And then in 1992, he set the all-time receptions record. So at one point, Art Monk had more catches than anybody in a single season, and he had more catches than anybody in the history of the NFL, period. And so with those 2 things in mind, I always found it ridiculous that anybody would ever lobby against him to be in the Hall of Fame. An easy Hall of Famer, a great guy, and an all-time beloved Redskin. Number 1.
I think he was likable throughout the league. And because he wasn't flashy, he wasn't arrogant. He was a fairly humble guy, just went out and did his job, made plays, and a great player. So, yeah, I have no problem with him being number 1. I have no problem with him being in the Hall of Fame with a bronze bust. Definitely deserving of that. And I think it's kind of cool that he saves all that playoff fireworks for that 3rd time. He's 11 years in the league and making up for lost time on the other 2.
For sure, yes. Now, the only thing that does stink about that is he caught a touchdown in the game against the Bills. They reviewed it, and his toe was on the line. So he never got a touchdown in the Super Bowl, but he was very close.
If only he had a shoe size just 1 smaller, he would have made it, right?
Exactly, yep.
All right, well, very, very good. So we mentioned there are 4 Hall of Famers, of course, Monk being one of them. So really no Hall of Famers since 1980 so far. Perhaps, you're number 1 and number 2. They might be in the Hall of Fame someday. But we did have 3 others that were before 1980, and one of them has one of the greatest football names of all time. We talked the other day about Mike Quick, and we talked about Max Speedy having appropriate names. Well, how about a name like Bruiser? Bruiser Kennard was drafted 18th in the 1938 NFL draft by a team that a lot of people may not recognize as a football team, but the Brooklyn Dodgers had a team back then, and that's who drafted Bruiser Kennard, and he was a great player, 5-time Pro Bowler, 4 times All-Pro, tackle position, very important in the 1930s football of the tackle. much like today, but a little bit different duties that they had back then. But yeah, great player there, and two-way player too, by the way, defensive and offensive tackle. And then in the 1953 draft, the Steelers took one of their Hall of Famers, John Henry Johnson, who also later played with San Francisco. I think he also played with the Houston Oilers near the end of his career. But John Henry Johnson, he was not drafted by this. Well, he was drafted by the Steelers, but he ended up playing for San Francisco first for some reason, and then came back to the Steelers later on in his career in the 60s. But great back there, 4-time Pro Bowler, 1-time NFL champ with the Lions when he played with them. And our other Hall of Famer is Paul Krause, who we've talked a lot about the Vikings Hall of Famers lately in these mid rounds, and Paul Krause is definitely one of those. Another defensive back, wide receiver, taken in the 1964 draft. The Denver Broncos also drafted him in the AFL draft. Ended up being drafted by the Redskins, believe it or not, and ended up going to the Vikings in the 1968. After playing a few seasons in Washington. So some great players there. That rounds out our Hall of Famers for slot number 18. Okay, so we also have, our most popular position drafted, if you're wondering, has been running back. 13 running backs over the course of 90 NFL drafts so far have been taken there. So maybe we'll have a running back taken in that slot. Not real... a lot of them being taken in the first round anymore because the position's not
probably
as high.
Because of the history of this pick. It's not good.
Yeah, maybe not. But I think Julian Love will probably be taken long before that at running back.
Oh, for sure.
He'll probably be top 5. And our draft stat of the day is kind of an interesting one. This really talks about how certain professional football teams sort of get magnetized to selecting players from certain schools. The Chicago Bears have drafted 41 Notre Dame players over the 90 drafts, not all in the first round, but 41 total. And they're closely followed by the Steelers, who have drafted 35 Notre Dame players. So kind of an interesting stat there for Fighting Irish fans and NFL draft fans. That's our draft tip of the day.
I love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is slot 18 down, and we have 18 days to go. We will be back tomorrow, just like we have in our 32-day voyage that we have going on here. Talk about slot number 17, the history of the players taken there, and we'll be right back tomorrow with Ed joining us to talk about this history.
See you tomorrow, Darin.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.